Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host, where today we are talking UFC 310. We've got Alejandro Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. We're going to be breaking down 5 fights here on the show today. Excited to break it down here, and been a great betting year. We're up 74 units for clients this year. 2 events left, 1 pay-per-view, and we got our guy here from Spinning Backfist, from Barstool Sports. We've got Jack McGuire. Jack, thanks for coming on today, man. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Big card this weekend. Hoping to have a great betting weekend. It has been a tough sledding year for me in the MMA spear betting, but still having a lot of fun and hoping that luck turns around. And we're looking at a great card this weekend. I like a few spots specifically in the fights we will be talking about tonight. So yeah, let's get into it.
Awesome. I appreciate it. So let's first talk the main event of the evening between Alejandro Pantoja versus Asakura here. Now, this is the spot, I will set the table. Here's the spot where you've got Asakura coming over from Ryzen. Big spot for him. UFC debut, main event, a massive opportunity for him to come over here. So how do you see this one playing out? And if you have a betting spot that you like, what would you go with?
So this is a tough spot, considering this may be just a true levels fight. Level and competition is something that, as I've continued to really, take my betting seriously within MMA, whether it be UFC, PFL, Bellator, you name it. And throughout, and not to say Risen is bad competition, but Kai has not fought somebody like Alejandro Pantoja, a guy who's truly just a well-rounded fighter. There's moments he struggles on the feet, as we saw against Usyk, but still, Pantoja, it's not like his chin is unbelievable. Feels like he's going to fade, and he never does. It seems like he's about to be tired, and he never is. He just finds the 5th, 6th, 7th gear. That being said, when we saw his fight against Usyk, I think there were moments that he struggled a little bit with the size of Usyk, the length. And seeing photos of Kai today, as they were taking the photos about a day before or 2 days before weigh-ins, fight week, Asakura is huge, man. I don't know how he makes championship weight. He is massive. I still think the line makes a lot of sense. I favor Pantoja. I look at him kind of like I like to have some action on the main event, so maybe I'll throw him in a parlay. I do look at Pantoja late as a real possibility. Pantoja around 3, around 4, around 5. But Asakura is going to give him those first 2 rounds may be tough for Pantoja, but the UFC views Kai as top dollar. They wouldn't put him in a fight like this if they didn't. Obviously, this division's a little bit in a weird spot, but still, usually, I mean, guys have been signed and brought over and been given top tier fights to prove it, and Asakura is getting it right away. Now, I think there's kind of a plan with the UFC try to get into Japan a little bit more. The Royval beating Tatsura was not ideal for them. I think they're cheering for Kai this weekend, but who knows? Maybe that's their vision, or maybe they just view him as a really, really, really good fighter. I can't wait for this. It's going to be fireworks. Pantoja fights always are. But right now, my bet, round 3, 4, and 5, Pantoja. He kind of buries him late.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with pretty much all your angles you're kind of going with. I think the first thing here we were even, kind of touching on here is how big Asakura is. And the fact that the last time, at least going on Tapology, looking back, the last time that he fought at flyweight was back in 2021 of December. And I think that already kind of opens up a little bit of suspect there, where The last two fights that he had was at bantamweight in 2023. So it's been years since he's even had to fight at flyweight, and there's got to be reasons. We know that, as we see many fighters, they're changing for many reasons that we're very obviously know what's more going on compared to someone like that's in Ryzen. But I think that's one thing. I think another thing is that this is a huge spot. This is a massive spot for him, getting a title opportunity in his debut. We've seen people that come over from other organizations or make their debut and not in this big of a moment, and just kind of fall flat. Maybe it's nerves, big moment, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of different things that go into that. That's hard to kind of quantify, but it's there. There's definitely some kind of situation there. And also, again, to your point, is the fact that I think that the draining of him, of trying to cut back down, to get down to championship weight, obviously, it's going to hurt cardio, hurt durability. He's been 3 of his 4 losses were by knockout. So he has been knocked out. The chin has been tested. And I think really just path of victory for me here really works out well for Pantoja's skill set. He's going to march forward. Everyone's going to talk about he needs to wrestle. I think that's what he's going to do. He's going to push forward. He's a bully type of guy, where I do think that Asakura may want to look to strike from the outside, use that range, which again, I agree with you that early on, I think Asakura is going to go for it. I think he's got nothing to lose in this particular spot. And if he can land something, he can land something. But again, Pantoja, out of 33 professional fights, he's never been finished. So it's another situation where the durability is there, the toughness is there. This being 5 rounds, I think plays into him as well, too. So a lot of things I think really tee up for Pantoja. Obviously, his line is indicating it here. So for me, I do like Pantoja inside the distance. That's sitting around minus 110. And I think that's a great number for the opportunity for him to get the job done. I do like the late part of that too. I do think that that's probably where this happens. I don't think he smokes him in the first round or two. So I do think it could be a 3rd or 4th round, but I think it's going to be one of those things, death by accumulation, just keep moving forward and finally find something. So for me in this spot, we're somewhat on the same page here, but we're going to have to go with Pantoja inside the distance at minus 110. Now, the next one we'll go over here is going to be Shavkat Rakhmonov. He is minus 400. In the comeback here, you've got Ian Machado Garry plus 300. We've got 2 undefeated guys here. Big spot for them. Rising stars, both of them. Big line, though, but 2 big stars here. So how do you see this one playing out here, Jack?
I have to say, I think this line is wide. I have all the respect in the world for Shavkat. The man he's been phenomenal to watch. It feels like we're watching the rise of the next, I don't want to compare him. We don't see this a lot. This is a John Jones rise from he's unstoppable. He every fight he wins by finish, but you look at the resumes, they're very similar. Minus 400, that is a wide line for a guy in Ian Garry, who I know we can talk all day about Ian Garry. There's a lot of, I almost think the reputation of Ian Garry is pushing this line too wide. Yes. I think about this fight on the feet, and I think Ian Garry, even if he's only slightly worse than Shavkat on the feet, what's this fight look like? Shavkat has to finish him to cover this line. I really think so. He has to finish him, and that's fair. But I think his finish line right now is what? I think it's minus 150,
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
And I would have put this line at Shavkat minus 200, minus 210, and the return on Garry plus 190-ish. I wouldn't put it above plus 200. And I think in these fights, you take it, and I think Ian can Ian trains very hard. It's his entire career is a little bit weird, considering he wanted to be the next McGregor. He leaves Ireland, but he's training over at Shoot Box. I got to say, I mean, I don't know what's going on down there in Brazil, but all these guys, they're in the best shapes of their lives.
They're in the
best shape of their life. It's all I say. I mean, Fight Nerds literally broke the new glove rule. Like they were the only ones getting finishes. So on top of all of that, I just look at this and I think, okay, gun to my head, yeah, I think Shavkat wins. plus 300 all day. I'll take that every day of the week. More times than not, I think this is a bet that will keep you in or give you a higher ROI than not. And maybe Shavkat goes in there and just really makes him look like Swiss cheese. But I'll be on Garry. Nothing huge, just a unit or so. I really like, and I think is quite good. And Shavkat was in a firefight with Jeff Neal not too long ago. Like, let's be real, guys. I know, and he won the fight, but Garry's fought more UFC competition. He's fought more ranked opponents. He's been tested more. So I'm excited to see it. And Jeff Neal struggled to get Ian Garry down. He didn't get him down. Now, Shavkat is Jeff Neal times a million, but I like my chances with this number.
Yeah, I can't blame you here. I mean, first of all, I agree with you when it comes to Shavkat. I mean, this guy just looks the part, 100% finish rate, 18-0, 10 submissions, 8 knockouts. I mean, the guy has all the goods. He's good on the feet, great on the ground. All that being said, you look at the big issue for me here in this particular spot is the takedown ability. And I think this line is definitely wide. And I think that this being a fight that probably plays out on the feet, and you've got Shavkat, depending the sample size here, but you got Shavkat 29% takedown success rate. You've got Garry 69% takedown defense rate. Obviously, that can be skewed a little bit who you're facing, all of those things. But still, if this plays out on the feet, I highly favor Ian Garry. And I think that the way that I kind of look at it is, again, honestly, to your point, is the fact that Shavkat's probably going to be a guy looking for that finish, hunting for that finish, going for it. And that could even open up opportunities for a guy like Ian Garry, who is so damn good at distance management, his footwork, just kind of now point fighting. He's a guy that's fine point fighting at range, kicking your leg, moving around, jab you, keep moving. And he can do that for, I think, all 5 rounds. I think he can go all 5 rounds. I think the 5 rounds also does help Garry too, where he's not forced to go out there and exchange within those first few rounds. He can let the fight kind of breathe a little bit, kind of let the fight get some legs a little bit. And that's really where I think this could start to kind of play out when you're looking at that particular situation here. And I think that the volume is probably going to be there for Ian Garry as well. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, really good things that Ian Garry is going to be able to do, quicker development combinations, faster hands, all of that. And then all that being said is, listen, if Garry gets to the ground, there's going to be problems, but I also do believe that Garry is, the people are a little bit sleeping on his grappling ability. I don't think that he's this high-level grappler, but I do think that he's got Charles Oliveira in his corner on Saturday night. I think that's going to help him a little bit there. Obviously, training with that team is going to help him there as well. So I like this number here at plus 300. I think Ian Garry this is too wide. I think, again, people just hate Ian Garry. They just don't like the character. They don't like who he is. People are also betting against him probably because of that as well. So in this spot here, I got to go Ian Garry plus 300. And I think that's a great value spot on this card. Now, the next one we'll go over here is going to be Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders here. Now, this is one, it was a rebooking. Sound like it was because of Anders. This was going to be at MSG. I was there and I did have a bet on that fight. Ended up getting washed away. But here we are, a rematch, or not a rematch, a rebooking here. We're looking at a pick'em line. How do you see this one playing out?
I liked Weidman when this fight initially happened, and I guess I like him even more here because whatever happened with Anders, this is a quick turnaround. How does Anders win this fight if he doesn't get his wrestling going? I mean, Chris Weidman, how is he going to... obviously it's minus 115, minus 105. So there's always a chance that Weidman does allow a bunch of takedowns. But if there's one thing in Weidman's favor, it is his wrestling. And what's Eric Anders going to do? He's going to take advantage of that? I don't see it. Only thing is, I don't love betting on somebody like Chris Weidman. So old. Now, Anders is old too.
Yeah.
So I go back and forth. I may pass on this. I haven't placed a bet on Weidman yet. I was at the UFC New York City card as well. MS or 309. I think maybe I had a bet on Weidman because I wanted to have a bet on Weidman in New York City retirement fight. It felt right, but I keep trying to think, how does Anders win this fight, and I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one where, you know, I was at even the, I don't know if you were at that as well, Atlantic City card, where Weidman, it was the eye pokes heard around the world. He was going out there and just slashing the face of Bruno Silva. Now, that was a spot I actually did bet Weidman. It was a climb play at plus 200. The spot field right, you know, all that thing, it felt right there. Now, with that being said, it did cash the ticket, but I did not like what I saw from Weidman. I thought he looked frail. I thought he looked slow. I mean, even now, what we know about Bruno Silva, I mean, it sounds like Bruno Silva just doesn't want to fight anymore. I mean, it really even ticks down that win probably a little bit more overall. And, you know, the age, to your point, you know, he's had surgery, injuries. There's just so many things. Now, with that being said, it's not that Anders is some world beater at all. He's been a journeyman fighter his entire career. He hasn't really accomplished too much. I mean, there were some hype very, very, very early. That kind of ended pretty quickly. So stylistically, I just feel like this is a spot where Anders can possibly be the one to do the bullying. Can move forward. I think he's going to have the physicality advantage. I think he could maybe bully him up against the fence. You know, Weidman's a pure, I mean, they don't have the greatest striking. But I just think that Weidman just seems like a frail shell of himself version. And this is a spot where now I think that Anders can move forward. He can use some of that, the strength advantage. He looks the part right now. I think that even the dirty boxing up against the fence could possibly work as well too. And if you look at these two guys, it's kind of like, who would really hurt the other one? Like, what's the probability? I would think it's going to be Anders hurting Weidman, and I also think if he can chop at those legs of Weidman, obviously that's going to be another spot for him. So this is a spot where, yes, I would tread lightly on this particular fight here, but I do think that this is going to have to be an Eric Anders side for me here. Plus 105, it looks like some money. Last I looked was continually coming in on Chris Weidman here. So with that being said, I'm going to be going Eric Anders minus 105. Now, the next one here we're going to go over is going to be Movsar Evloev minus 265 against Aljamain Sterling plus 200. Here we got another undefeated rising star against a former champion. Big spot here for Movsar. If he wins, probably gets the title shot next. So how do you see this one going down?
I really want to see these two guys next to each other. I'm
True.
a little bit concerned with Sterling's size, even though he was a huge 135 pounder, just massive. But going up, Evloev is, you know, he's been, I don't want to say he's been great. He's been good. So I look at this line and I think, oh, Sterling. But then I try to break it down in my mind. How does Sterling win this fight? And on the feet, I guess his striking maybe a little bit, but Evloev had moments, very good moments against Dan Ige, and I think he would do that again here against Sterling. And then would Sterling be able to get his wrestling going, his grappling going? I'm not 100% sure. I kind of think this screams a 29-28 Evloev, 30-27. And you look at your Sterling ticket and you think this was a good bet, but was it? So I may end up passing on this. Maybe I'll talk to some people and they'll convince me, but at this point in time, I have heard that Sterling's been training really well, but when hasn't he trained well? That's not my concern ever with Sterling. Maybe looking back on it against Sugar Sean, that was probably too quick, that he came back a little bit too quick. He was probably, I mean, he defended the title multiple times at that point. But outside of that, like I fully trust that Sterling's giving 100% training and he wants to win this fight, but Evloev just, yeah, it just screams 30-27, maybe 29-28, two scorecards and 30-27. And it's just is what it is.
So Yeah, I mean, this is a spot where you got two guys that are very similar. They're decent strikers and they lean on that wrestling here. And I think that honestly is probably the biggest issue here, where you've got, you know, Sterling, where he needs to get that wrestling going. He needs to be able to utilize that. He needs to mix it in. He's got decent striking, but really mixing in that wrestling is really where he finds a lot of success. He can get the takedowns, backpacks guys, finds ways to get to the back. All those things really work out well. But overall, Evloev is just, I think, better than Aljo everywhere. I just think he has the better striking. I think that, he's got the better combinations, the better wrestling. I think he can kind of nullify some of the things that Aljamain does. And I think there's going to actually be a lot of stalemates here. I think there's going to be points where there's not going to be much striking. I think there's going to be points where Evloev's going to have him on the ground and not be able to pile up any of the damage, just kind of, have Aljo on the ground, keep him down there. And I think also the fact that, Aljo is good when it comes to offensive wrestling, but I think defensive wrestling, he's not as good. He can kind of be, bullied around a little bit against the right guy. And I think that's what can happen here for Evloev. And then with that being said, on kind of where I'm going with the play here is on the side, the fact that Evloev is just not a finisher. He's 18-0, 11 decisions, 4 submissions, 3 knockouts. He's 8-0 in the UFC with no finishes. And to your point, there's been multiple times he's looked a little shaky. There's been a couple little shaky moments for him there. I mean, obviously that's, it's tough to kind of nitpick on a guy that's undefeated and winning. But with that being said, I do think that this is a fight that does have the legs to get to the decision. I think that even when Aljo's on his back, he's going to have enough where he can at least survive, get through rounds, not just get washed on the ground at all. So Evloev is a -265 here. You got him to win by decision. Right now, it's not widely available, but there is a line out there at -134. And I think that's a pretty good line and a very, very probable outcome for Movsar to just control the action over 3 rounds. Like you said, a 29-28, a 30-27, get the job done. So that's where I'm going with that. And I will be going Movsar via decision at -134. And the last play we're going to be going over here is going to be Dominic Reyes, a classic match between Dominic Reyes and Anthony Smith here. We've got Reyes, big -350 number. We've got Anthony Smith +255 here. Both these guys may be washed and old. We're not sure yet. We're going to find out. So, Jack, how do you see this one playing out between these two?
So, yeah, I don't know if I have a play here. I was looking at the under 1.5, but it's +120-ish. But I think Reyes takes care of business, but his KO line's -125. I don't want to take that. I was thinking KO round 1, but that's not even really that enticing. I think Reyes is in a good spot. Obviously, his chin will always be a concern, but he's just, I think, if you want to talk about guys who are Anthony Smith, it's just, I know he had that win in Brazil or against the Brazilian fighter Vitor, or not, what's his name?
Yeah, Petrino.
Petrino, yeah. And that was good, but then he comes back and he's just
back to himself.
He's a blah. And I think Dominic Reyes, honestly, is better everywhere than him right now. Obviously, he could get on the ground and then get stopped, but Smith is very tough. He'll eat shots all day. We saw it against Ryan Spann last summer, and he'll find a way to keep going, and he'll have the ref stop it before he'll stop. So I kind of look at this and think it's another pass for me. Dominic Reyes, I think, is in a really good spot to have another victory and kind of continue this second part of his career.
Yeah. I mean, I there's definitely points there I agree with, because this is a fight where, it's just one, the line is extremely wide. And if you like Reyes, I think you got to get creative here. But Reyes, definitely his chin is a massive concern here. And we know he's been knocked out brutally multiple times. But with that being said, I mean, the guys that were knocking him out were definitely heavy hitters. I mean, Yuri Prochazka, the Polish Power, and also Ryan Spann. I mean, definitely guys that do have power. Prior to that, obviously, was a John Jones fight. So it was, competitive, obviously a very, very long time ago. But you look at with Smith. I mean, the guy has not knocked anybody out in an extremely long time. So I think it kind of takes that a little bit away from Reyes and getting caught or really dealing with that, where Smith is low volume. And yeah, I mean, blah is probably the right way to put it. I mean, he doesn't really do too much out there. Plants his feet and kind of just slowly moves forward, where I think Reyes is a guy that can throw the big shots. The last time that even, last time knockout that Smith had was 2018 against Shogun Rua. So, I mean, that was where we were all like, oh, wow, I can't believe this guy's got this kind of power. And he really, is just a journeyman fighter. So in this spot here, I got to go Reyes. And I think I am going to go the knockout here. I think it's going to be a spot where he can look to push forward. I don't think that you're going to see too much really resistance offensively from Smith. And I think that's going to allow Reyes, after a nice knockout win over Jacoby, I think it's going to bring him a little bit more of confidence, where he was, everyone thought he was done. He still may be done. But when you're fighting Anthony Smith, I think that there's a shot here. He is tough, but I do think that this is a spot where Reyes can land the big shot, get the knockout, get the victory. So in this spot here, I'm going Dominic Reyes by knockout. That's around -125. So there you have it for our plays for UFC 310. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. And Jack, thanks for coming on, man, and appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much. Best of luck to everyone out there. And should be a fun card. Even a lot of these fights, even throughout the prelims, are phenomenal. Can't wait to see how it goes. And hopefully we will all cash some bets.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Now, we got one more left after this weekend, so we will see you next weekend, and let's cash.